Now, this one is painful for me. And so that needs to be understood that I have to keep several things in mind right now. I have to keep in mind the propriety and discretion to keep identities private and so on. And anyway, it's and then there, of course, is the grand overriding theme of the political situation that is the foundation of our life now, and which I have very little experience living through. So, very much in line with the most recent comments from Professor Freeman on her, I think it's, she calls it Thoughts for Those Who Can't Sleep. And she gets about, I don't know, between 12 and 1,500 people engagement, I think, for these. They're about 20-minute long talks. And she emphasizes everything that she says, of course, is quite crucial these days, because she's an eminent U.S. historian at Yale. And the idea that our time right now is undetermined, and she emphasizes for a historian to say that it's undetermined, and to think that that's profound, that we truly don't know what's happening. We truly don't know whose role now is what, because legitimacy has collapsed. There is no legitimacy now. There's no faith in institutions. And there is no faith interpersonally. And now it becomes my personal story. One of the most important people in my life, who I have known since roughly 2005. We have always had quite brutal clashes when it comes to when thought comes to its limits. Somehow that individual plus me together create a kind of clash of cognitive limits that becomes truly frightening. And over the years, I know I've explored the phenomenon endlessly in talk therapy and psychoanalysis. As a patient, as an analyst sand on the couch. So I've been talking about this very issue at least for the past 15 years. Formally. I have very well developed views about this phenomenon between myself and this individual. So, of my missives of these YouTube installments wherein I expound the depths of my person, I nevertheless know very well that this person in question, I know exactly where all their limits are, and I know that I'm just, I'm complicating probably all of them. Because that's what I do. And hey, if you got to be that close to me, that we've known each other for decades, you know that most of what I am, you have yet to inquire about. And so, this again, I will emphasize, one of the highest level, highest priority relationships in my life, of which there are only a very few. We're talking about counting on your fingers few. Now, with people that I know less well, this explosion of intellectual activity on my YouTube channel, I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to, again, nobody's, again. I don't need the word again. We're talking about an individual that is supposed to be comfortable, at the very least, with the obligation to know what I think. We're both Americans. I was born in Los Angeles. They were born somewhere else. There is actually a cultural difference, a significant cultural difference, just I think based on where we grew up. Because I grew up in Los Angeles, in Southern California, and Orange County, and they grew up somewhere else. And I noticed some really hard asymmetries that are really even hard to identify, but they're there. So, anyway, I've been extraordinarily skittish and nervous about sharing any of my YouTube oratory with said individual. Especially for, if it's just going to be something self-indulgent, and they know that. I've told them, I practically have to apologize for everything that I say before I say it. Sorry if this sounds self-indulgent, literally, because I'm prone to oratory, and people are extraordinarily in this country afraid of being talked at, talked down to, lectured to, mansplained, what the fuck ever. If you don't like my mansplaining, why don't you womansplain me then? But it's got to be a real explanation. Explanations have criteria. And you know what? Those criteria include your feelings. All your irrational feelings and affects are perfectly admissible into scientific discourse. Anyway, I don't mean to belabor the point, but this is what happened. I emailed them after I had been discussing some big swinging dicks that I'm trying to antagonize for the sake of pure reason itself, for the sake of the survival of pure reason itself. I BCC'd them on one of the meticulously and painstakingly crafted emails that I send out one by one. I don't use any email automation or any list at all, period. Every single email that I type out, I sit there and I curate the recipients that I'm going to share it with. It's very carefully curated. You know, I'm not going to send analytic philosophy stuff to phenomenologists and the other way around, or psychoanalysis stuff to journalists, or, I mean, unless there is a very good reason, right? So after I BCC'd them, and I think it was a relatively short set of names, and they're all world famous professors, world leaders in their field, and I BCC'd this personal friend of mine. And immediately they texted me back and they made a joke. Oh, so I'm relegated to the BCC position, huh? And I felt, oh shit, I fucked up. I was thinking I was doing it for the sake of propriety and discretion, and they took it as a slight that they weren't included. They weren't included in the, and of course, I mean, I guess it could be interpreted that way because the names, all the names that, I mean, they're very, you know, I mean, they're crazy names, right? And then the person sees that you're hiding their name. So that was the way that that was the way I interpreted what the message, the text message said me, because none of this is happening on the phone. Okay? So then I thought, okay. Well, that's good. I will make sure to include them in the publicly visible, the visible set of names that all the recipients can see. And I did. I just did. And then I get a text message back from them that says, hey, can you please remove me from your list? And I responded back. I said, I mean, I'll even read it verbatim. And I'm reading it verbatim because, of course, this individual knows that every single word out of my mouth for the past year, I have told everybody numerous times, is a political act. Every single word out of my mouth. Therefore, every single part of my life is theoretically public knowledge, or at least publicly admissible. Anyway, so I said, it's not a list. I won't share my thoughts with you then if that is what you are telling me. Oh, I'm relegated to BCC, suggesting that they would like to be part of the visible recipients. And then they get one part of a huge chunk. I mean, just names from like entire sets of faculty and stuff from like Oxford and Cambridge and shit. Institute for Advanced Study, right? I mean, it's taken me a year to collect those emails one by one by one. Remove me from the list. So am I just, indulging right now? Even though it sounds indulgent, that's fine. You can hit me for that. That's fine. That's fine. Because I believe that the point that I'm trying to communicate right now far exceeds any personal question related to my personal struggles or whatever. And the point is this: that exemplifies the very most intimate and immediate moral connection between two American individuals. And nevertheless, the limits of discourse are almost absolutely shallow. And that does not bode well for civic discourse or interpersonal discourse in the United States, if anywhere. I mean, well, they don't have these problems in other parts of the world. We can want unity. We can want social unity. We can want to have the feelings. But if we're not prepared to have the thoughts, it's already over. The barbarians are at the gates. People are getting their legs run over by SUVs. Women are being held up at gunpoint by masked bandits. Whole neighborhoods are screaming out their windows, "Everybody get inside. They're here. They're here. Everybody hide." You can want to be optimistic. You can want to feel empathy. But that's all axiomatic. If you don't feel empathy, then you're not even listening to this anyway. So that's beside the point. Empathy with no thought is void. You cannot emphasize. That was almost a slip. I almost emphasized. You cannot empathize with an individual whose thoughts you are unwilling to think.